Hi everyone, welcome to the third part of the mineral tutorial series. On this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how I went ahead to light the scene and apply some shaders in Redshift. I already have real-time toggle on, and here on I'm using the default settings, 24 frames per second and 240 frames of length. And here I'm just gonna make sure to animate on the y-axis. I'm gonna say that's $t times 30. That way when we play the object rotates. The other thing I have in the scene is the camera. I've already laid out a camera. The object itself has nothing in particular. Let's have a look at the attributes that we have here. So I have area, position, name, and normal. So we're only going to be using, making use of this one, the area. So first thing, we need some lights. And I'm going to be using Redshift. So I have the Redshift tab here. I'm going to put myself more or less on the top view. I don't want it to be perfectly on top, but something like this. Control, click on the Redshift light, have a look, pretty far away, make sure it's a bit closer, a bit larger as well. Yeah, 2 is a good value. I think 2 is good enough. Next, so this is going to be our top light and our main light. I'm going to be using the exposure to control, so this is a different way of controlling the intensity, and it's basically just a stronger way of controlling your light intensity instead of just working with your intensity multiplier. If you apply an exposure, this is kind of going to multiply this one. Okay, so it's just a stronger effect that you get, but you can achieve the same result by multiplying this one. I'm gonna start with 4 probably. Let's set up our render so we can have an idea. Let's come here to out, type Redshift. I'm gonna use the default. Make sure that you select the IPR and just click and drag this one. Next, on the IPR, I'm gonna make sure I don't have, I'm not a big fan of progressive. I prefer to see it right away, and well, in certain occasions it's handy, but on this one, not really. And I'm just gonna make sure that everything is okay. Let's use just one bounce for the primary engine, so we're just gonna be calculating 1 bounce of indirect illumination. This has absolutely no effect, and for now let's just leave the rays at 16. This should give us a pretty fast render. Considering it's Redshift, it's already pretty fast no matter what you do. And next, let's go to object, and I'll create a material network. I'll call it Redshift, and I'll create a material. For now, it's just for lighting purposes. I'm not even gonna do anything to it. Let's go. I'm gonna go to render view and use it right from here. Camera and render. It's pretty strong. Let's go to the light and just bring this down a bit, maybe to. Yeah, I think considering this is wide, I'll probably go higher. But for now, let's just leave it like this. I think it's okay. On the camera, I'm gonna make sure I start with the default resolution. It's faster. And I want to add, I'm gonna add a light from the left and a light from the right. So I'll do the same thing, just zooming on the object, something like this, for the right direction. Control click on the Redshift light, zoom out. Probably too close this one, so I'm gonna pull it back. Maybe a bit less from top to bottom, something more like this. I'm gonna leave this for now, and here I'm just going to use blue, something blue. You can visualize in the viewport. I'm going to switch to a dark background. Turn this off. Soften the camera. Maybe increase the intensity a bit, and maybe saturate it a bit more. Yeah, I think this is gonna work. So next, the other side, again, same thing. So something like this. I'll call this cool main, and the next one is going to be the red. See how far it is. This one is really far. Just push it in. Give it a red color. Let's see how this looks. Call this red. Call this blue. I don't want the red to be as strong. I want the red to be subtle. Maybe less of a red. Increase the blue. Maybe 1. It's important to maintain the hierarchy of the lights. So the main light needs to definitely still be the strongest, no matter what you do. If this is our main light, then it should be the strongest one. So I think we're good to go. We can start working on the materials now. I'm going to be providing some textures along with the HIP file, and the textures that I'm going to be providing are the following. On the animation that I rendered out, I was actually using some really nice textures from Polygon, but I can't really provide you with those, so I went ahead and went into Substance to generate something pretty similar in terms of the values and the tones, and this is also going to give us a nice result. I'll be providing the ambient occlusion, the base color, and probably the height. I don't think we need anything else, but I'm gonna just give you all of these, and you can play with them as much as you want. Redshift materials. Let's leave this as is, and I'll create a material builder. Redshift material builder, and this is gonna be our material. And here, let's start with the basic material. And on the example animation, what I'm doing is actually combining 2 different materials. Let's have a look at one of the renders that I did. And as you can see, I'm just combining 2 different materials. And that's what we're going to be doing. So we'll be using the area attribute that we created, and we're going to be using it to generate this, the mask that's actually controlling where the red material appears and the more darker and metal-y material appears. Okay, so let's start by creating the first one, the darker material. I'm going to be using, I know I'm going to be using that texture, so I can go ahead and just grab that base color. We didn't work on UVs for this object, so we're going to be using triplanar projection instead. Okay, we could do some quick UVs, but I like triplanar. I think it's a great solution for a lot of situations, so in this case, that's what I'm going to be doing. And Redshift makes it really easy to work with triplanar. Same image on each axis, so you just need to connect it to one of the axes. And next we're going to be connecting this to the diffuse color, just so we can have an idea of the scale, and we connect our material to our surface. Let me just disable the reflections for now, and that's it. Let's see how this looks in the render. Okay, I'm gonna increase the resolution of the camera. I'm accessing the parameters of the camera just by clicking here, so it's faster. Let's try to have a better look of the size of the texture. It's not bad. Could probably have it bigger. So let's go here to the triplanar and adjust the scale. Yeah, I like this scale. 0.25 is a good scale. The resolution is the texture has a lot of detail and resolution, so we can make it big like this. Okay, so it looks good in terms of scale. Now, the idea is for this to be kind of more metal-y, so let's make sure we turn on metallic here. So I'm going to be using GGX, and here on the Fresnel type, I'm going to be using metalness and 0.95. Okay, let's add some roughness to this. 0.5, 0.3 probably. We can work with the roughness texture as well. Let's see what that gives us. It gives us a nice variation, but I would have to control the output of this better. Maybe here, do a fit, in this case a range, change range. Again, Redshift is great doing these automatic conversions between things, and in this case I really just need a float value, so it's automatically converting the vector information coming from this triplanar into a single float. And the idea is for me to make sure that I don't have this much roughness on the areas where I don't see, so try to reduce that. Yeah, I want a bit more shine all over, but it's nice to have some variation. Actually, it's I think it's a good option. This, what else? And yeah, I think we're good to go with this material. Now, what I'm gonna do next is probably just add some displacement to the surface. Again, using triplanar. And here I'm gonna be loading up the height map. The displacement, I want it to be fairly low. I'm gonna stop the render, connect this to the displacement. And for the displacement to actually happen, I need to go to the object as well. And here on the object, I'm gonna go to Redshift options, enable tessellation, and make sure I have enabled displacement as well. I've already adjusted the displacement scale to 0.1 because this is supposed to be fairly subtle, so this should work. This displacement scale has 0.1 along with the other multiplier being at 0.1 as well. This should give us an adequate amount of displacement. I like it here. Don't like it as much some other places. What I'm going to do is the displacement I'm going to change the range of these values to make sure that the displacement is actually gonna happen in both directions. Right now my scale is going from 0 to 1 in terms of my texture is going from 0 to 1, so I'm just pushing things out and I'm gonna try and change the range to be from minus 0.5 . This one doesn't matter, to 0.5. So I think this looks better. We could try increasing the intensity of this a bit, see how this looks. Might be breaking some things here. Yeah, let's not go as far, this far, 0.14. It's good enough. So we have our metallic texture. We can of course darken it a bit more, but right now I think it's looking good. So let's work on the next one, on the next material. So this is our material, first material. This is going to be the displacement for everything. I'm not going to get too complicated with this. Let's start with a new material. This material is simpler. It should have some metalness as well, so let me add, I'm going to put this at 0.5. And I basically want it to be, I'm going to use the same texture here for the diffuse. I think this happens. So the diffuse color is going to use the same color as the other one. But we're going to be using a lot more. We're going to be having red here, 0.1. Let's see how this looks. A bit too red, too much red. Let's try 0.5, maybe 0.6. And because we're actually using some of that base color, it's also having an effect here, just so it's not completely clean. So we have both our materials. Great. Next step is blending them. To blend these materials, we need a mask, and for our mask, we already know that we're going to be using the area attribute. So I'm going to grab that point attribute. Stop this. I'm going to grab the point attribute, make sure it's called area. Let's have a look at it. I'm going to connect it directly to the surface here so we can see it in the view, in the render. Okay, this is the information we have right now. And what I want to do is I want to blend these two materials. Call this red and this dark. And here we're going to be creating a blend where this is going to be our base color, material dark, and the second one is going to be on layer 1, and we're going to be blending these. So now the way this is going to work is wherever my mask is white, it's going to show this material. So it's kind of the opposite of what I have here. I want white to be on the edges. So I need to invert this. Let's do a change range. I'll use this one, it's simpler. So we want the opposite, so this is 0, 1. Nice. I want more contrast. Okay, I would like to have more contrast on this. Let me just check one thing. Disabled off. I want to have more contrast, so if you remember from our area attribute wasn't actually going to 0, neither all the way up to 1. It was around 0.86. I'm going to say it's 0.7. So now I have some really nice contrast here. I'm going to say here it's 0.02, something like that. And then I'm going to also play with this. Okay. Or I'm going to leave it like this, and instead I'm going to use ramp. Maybe not completely white, but for now let's just leave it at white. This might be an interesting transition to have. Let's give it a try. Let's connect this and see how it looks. Okay, so we have a nice merging, a nice combination. I'm not a big fan of these intermediate values, so I would definitely make these closer to each other. Have more of a sharp transition. Yeah, something like this. Maybe a bit less. Yeah, this looks good. So we're combining both materials. And I think this is looking interesting. Now, one extra step, one extra thing that I would like to add. Remember, we're not using displacement yet. The other thing that I would like to add is curvature. I think this could, on these corners, we could use some curvature. I'm going to show you the curvature, how this looks. Again, connecting it directly to the surface so I can quickly have a look at it in the viewport. I want to convex, it's true, number of samples 32, and the radius, it's huge, so it's not that big, maybe 0.05, maybe even less. Something like this. I like the fact that it's kind of noisy. We could increase the samples, but not really that interested in it. So I'm going to leave it at 32. We can also remap. Do some cleaning up here. So let's say some. Just making sure it's perfectly black and white. Yeah, I think this is, we can work with this. Again, I'm gonna do a change range. And I'm gonna invert this. And yeah, I'm gonna multiply our current mask, which is this one. Yeah, so this is our mask, and I'm actually gonna multiply these two. Let's do multiply this, and let's see how this looks. We should see, yeah, this is a nice influence to have. Here on the range, I'm just going to make sure that the minimum a bit higher so we can get a darker contrast there. Yeah, I think it's good value. Let's see how this looks in our materials. Yeah, it gives us those corners, and I think it's a nice touch to have. It gives it another level of complexity, and I think it's an interesting addition. If you don't want as much red, just remember you can come here and reduce this to have less red. And only the smallest pieces are actually going to be in red. I think this is a cool proportion as well. Sharpening it up. Yep. So all that's left is for us to connect the displacement. And we're done. That's it. So this is the final look comparing to the render that I have. Basically, this has some post-production. Of course, we can. It also has the depth of field activated. Let's rotate this a bit. In terms of depth of field, here in Redshift, I'm using these defaults, but on the sampling, you need to really exaggerate the f-stop. So it's just a matter of scale. My scene, I didn't paid much attention to the scale of the object, so I had to be kind of drastic. But you can be even more aggressive, and it's going to give you a nice sense of depth, even more if you want. And as you can see, Redshift is just really fast. If I go here to the output on the Redshift, so for the final render I'll probably increase this to 64, and here on the settings maybe 8 and 256 with a bigger threshold, and this is almost pretty close to final quality. Could still increase this to 512, and it's just really fast. It has depth of field on it, and it's not a complex scene, of course, but it's still impressive. You can render out animations with your computer. In my case, I'm rendering out from a laptop. You might be hearing it, but it's thanks to Redshift, it's actually possible. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and as soon as I can get some time available, I'll try to recreate the same thing using Mantra. But for now, it's just Redshift. This one is already longer than I was anticipating, and see you on the next one.